This episode is powered by denmeditation.com. Though meditation is the primary focus, the bigger goal is for people to understand and love themselves, thus creating more harmony in the community at large. To find out more about Den Meditation's teacher training programs, retreats, and all things Den Meditation, go to denmeditation.com. Welcome to Den Talks Podcast. This is Tal, your host and the founder of Den Meditation. We have Isabella Greene on today. She's a metaphysical specialist, a spiritual healer, and also an author of this really incredible book called Leaving the Trap: How to Exit the Reincarnation Cycle. It's one of the reasons I love doing this show, which is my goal is to constantly bring you different perspectives, ways to actually look at your life and to look at who you are. And then it's up to you to decide what works for you and doesn't work, right? That's what we're always trying to do here, is get to know ourselves better. So here's a whole nother take on reincarnation that we've never actually spoken about here, which is what I find really fascinating and interesting. Isabella's amazing. She grew up very spiritual, but for different reasons had to kind of put things aside. And through her own experiences, really ended up tapping into this amazing ability of hers that, like I said, she's had since she was little, but this ability to kind of quantum travel. And she has really experienced things on the other side. And through all of these experiences, all of these moments and things she has learned, she's channeled this incredible book and this incredible information for us. We talk about it. We go into depth about this idea of how we keep coming back into this earth. It's not just karma, but there's a choice. And you can make this choice when you are ready to leave this dimension and start living lifetimes in other dimensions or other planets. So it's really, this is a good woo-woo one. I love it. You know, I love going into this type of speak. And again, be open, listen. She is a beautiful soul. And I'm always curious to know your thoughts. So please go on and comment wherever you listen or watch. You guys are incredible and so supportive, and we could not do this podcast without you. So thank you for that. And here we go. Here's Isabella Greene. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, I'm excited to talk to you because what an interesting take you have in your experiences with reincarnation and your whole book about, you know, leaving the trap. And we're going to get into it because I think this is going to fascinate a lot of people. Talk more about your book and about what reincarnation, another way of looking at it than how a lot of us have thought about it, and then ways that we can actually be in control of it ourselves, which is what I love about it.
Thank you.
But before we even get there, I just want to talk a little bit more, because part of the reason you have all this knowledge, you know, within reincarnation are all these, you know, leaving your body, these astral trips and then quantum trips and all these things you've done. So, which is amazing. But then I want to know, how did you even get there? Like, who were you 20 years ago?
20 years ago, I was a rock star wannabe working in financial services industry.
Wow.
I helped to manage bands, and I helped bands to get on stage. And I also did some fashion shows with the bands. And I was a road manager for bands.
Wow.
That was my first job when I was in my early, like from 18 to 21.
I know in your book at one point you kind of refer, it seems like a dark night of the soul. It seems like you're overdosing possibly. You kind of, you know, paint a picture of not a great night. You said it was like 22 hours where you were
right. another party gone wild a little bit kind of thing.
Now, like, if you look back to that time, were you seeking at that point still and just seeking in the wrong places?
No, that was accidental. That was totally just an accident. I was born with abilities, and I was curious. But then I was told that don't talk about it, don't do this. And then in the United States, it was, hey, you know, shut that down because that's in your way. It's a corporate, like to fight for survival in the corporate reality or to party with the rock and rollers. You really don't need your abilities. They're actually in your way. And so I just shut everything down for 20 years. And I was not seeking. It was an accident. It was a straightforward overdose.
So when you say you were shut stuff down from a kid, like what were the abilities you had from a kid?
I was able to see things like spirits. I was able to talk to animals and plants. I was able to connect with which seemed like non-terrestrial objects in the sky. Um, I was able to tell fortunes since I was like 6 or 8 years old. I was doing all kinds of
Wow.
fortune telling cards. I was reading palms. I was doing all kinds of things. And it ran in the family, but we very much kept it in the family because the family did not want anything. How like you would be taken out in a straitjacket if we discussed what kind of abilities the family had. And so my parents always said like everyone, all women in the family had abilities, and it was always said don't ever discuss that outside of the house. So
It's so interesting because when you talk about it, you actually really light up. So, like when you think about memories of some of that, maybe communication, is there anything that pops in your head of just like, was any of this communication in some ways maybe like your friends, like your friend group? Do you know what I mean? Like, is that what gave you comfort at times?
I didn't have any virtual friends or non-physical friends. But I was always looking for non-physical stuff, and it always seemed very, I don't know, that just tickled me always. You know, we're born knowing that. We're born knowing our abilities. We're born knowing what we're here for. That's why it lights you up when you think about it. But then,
That's
I
so
literally
nice.
made a decision to just like stop. Yeah.
When was the first time you astral projected? Because you said you did it on your own. So how did you do it for yourself that first time?
It's not hard. For astral projecting, you really need to learn how to relax so deeply that you go into these, whatever, theta, something state of the brain where you literally are able to lift your astral form out of your physical form. So I was really working on getting out of the body, and it naturally came to me that you need to really, really deeply relax. It's very different with the quantum travel that I do now, and I've been doing for the last 9 years, because that's not gentle at all. It shakes your whole body. You use your kundalini energy. If you deeply relax, you're probably not going to go anywhere. I don't know. But I haven't astral projected since I was about 23, 4 years old.
I was going to
And
ask you, like, once you learn to quantum project is like astral projection, you're like, why would I do this? Is it just like,
no, because it takes you into a whole different dimension. Astral projecting takes you into the astral plane. And that's very similar to our earth plane. There are unpleasant situations there. This is also where the afterlife takes place. That's astral plane. And then quantum travel is you bust through the firmament, the cage around Earth plane that is the astral dimension, and or then you get to the point that you bypass that altogether, so you can explore higher realms and the true essence of the field of the quantum field of information that creates and sustains worlds, really. So we call it source consciousness, if you wish.
I love that. And we're going to talk about it because I want to
Sure.
get into especially some of the amazing places you've been. But so tell me, so you come over here, you're in finance, you're a roadie, you're a tour manager. I mean, you're doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you completely turn it off? Like there weren't times, especially if you're like in finance, you didn't want to like use some of these skill sets?
I turned that off before I even got to New York City. I was in Pennsylvania for 5 years. And I remember that me and the friend there, he was teaching me Tai Chi. And when I was doing Tai Chi, I observed the movement of the chi. I observed my energy. I observed other realities. I felt presence of other stuff outside of the physical. And I remember laying down after one of these classes on the floor, and I was thinking, I really don't want to know any of this, because this makes me want to not get a job. And
Mm.
this makes me want to really not worry about, money or whatever, anything else. And so I remember I walked out of that class. As I was walking out, I told him, I said, we're not doing this any longer because I don't want to see any of this anymore. And after that, pretty soon after that, I moved to New York. And that's when the whole, rat race started there for me. And I did not have, well, I was always kind of like, I was like a muse to the musicians. I was always an inspirational person for people. I was always the one showing up for friends where when they were in trouble, I somehow had just the right words to tell them. So in the background, I was doing a little bit of what I'm doing now, but I was not having experiences except drug induced experiences. So that kind of replaced my natural abilities for a while.
And was it comfortable because of that? Like, do you feel like drugs in some ways was comfortable because you used to have these experiences
It's
just in
the
a
other
different
way
way?
around, actually. When I started quantum traveling, when I started doing the advanced yogic practices, which shake up your kundalini, you do in the breath that like you're nauseous, you're sweating, it is really uncomfortable for the body. Everything is shaking, you're out of control physically at all, and then it just shuts down and you're gone. When the energy was starting to come up and I was starting to get all these symptoms, I was telling myself, like, there was a part of me that was like getting tense or scared. I was telling myself, hey, remember all the stuff you used to put in your body? Like, hey, you survived that. This is nothing. Just, this is clean and
Wow.
pure. You're going to be fine. So that actually, the history of doing powerful drugs, that helped me when I just first started doing these advanced yogic practices that I do now every night.
Because it is a huge sense of letting go, right? I mean,
Yes,
you
that's
have to just
that. Yeah.
trust.
Yeah, whatever happens, but there was a voice in my head, like my own thoughts, that was saying, you know what, hey, remember what you did with that? Remember how much of that you did, and you were fine. You're gonna be fine now. Don't worry about it.
That's hilarious. I think it's interesting when you're talking about the Tai Chi part, when you made a choice of like no more. It was as if like I keep picturing you literally like your human side and
Yeah,
your, soul side were literally at a convergence. And it was like, nope, human side. Like I have to
yeah.
do the humanness, which is I need a job. None of this fits that part.
Right, because like I said, it literally removed the drive to fight for survival. And plus, I also could see so much about people. I could see how many people were like empty vessels, and it was so the inspiration to interact and to do these things. I could very well see how empty this whole American dream is, and it was driving me crazy. It wanted me to get away from the whole thing, and so I was just like, stop that and let's go into the American dream.
Wait, let's talk about that for a second. So tell
Sure.
me like visually what that would look like for you. Or is it a feeling?
There was no really visually at that point. It was just the awareness, like the full awareness. I would speak to people who thought that they were very well off, and I just was seeing nothing behind that facade, behind that presentation. It literally was like my shaman teacher back when I was 17. He was saying that these are dead walkers,
Mm,
like death walkers. I was like, I so I saw that back then when I was astral projecting, but death meaning there is no spark,
life.
there is no life really that ignites that soul. That's it. And I was seeing that everywhere. It was and I said, I don't want to see this. I don't want to know this because I had a lot of pressure from my parents. I had a lot of pressure from everywhere. Like, oh, come on, you in America, go ahead and achieve, achieve, achieve. That's the whole idea, right? And so I said, right, I don't want to know any of this that I know. shut that down and go and achieve. And I did.
That's interesting. So it's almost like I see the bullshit behind this American dream, but I'm going to find a way to get this thing they talk about.
But
Kind
I
of.
have to, because it's very much a condition, and it's something that everyone believes, and so I made myself believe that too, against my own inner judgment, the feeling that that's just not right for me. But I made myself go into it. That's why. That's probably why I drank so much. I know for
Yeah.
sure that I drank so much, and I started doing drugs to just kind of, because the overload of that contrast was too hard to handle at the beginning. And so then that's when I was just like shutting that down. And alcohol is great for that because it drops your frequency, and all you know is that physicality, the surface level right there.
It's so interesting how, yes, alcohol drops your frequency, but then so many reasons people go to it is for that buzz that helps take people out of their shell. And I'm sure in the moment makes it feel like you're raising your frequency, like an easier ability to connect with people, have more fun, but yes, you're numbing your feelings. So you're ignoring that. It's just an interesting.
Yeah, but it just tells you where they're at originally. If
Mm,
alcohol lifts their spirit, if
and they're already
alcohol,
happy.
it means it tells you where they're vibrating originally. All right. So that but what it does too, it removes the inhibitions. It removes
Mhm.
the conditioning. It's easier to interact because you are not feeling so not good enough or shy or what have you, right? So all of that kind of goes away with alcohol, and it makes you um, being able to access, because you kind of shutting down that whole part of you that will be in the way of that.
That's so interesting. It's so true. It's like if you're kind of naturally depressive, alcohol does make you more depressed. If you're
Yeah,
harboring a lot of anger, chances are you're an angry drunk.
right. Yeah, for
Yeah, when I
sure.
was a drinker, you're right. I was a very happy drunk. I used to joke, I'm like, you want me to drink? I'm the happiest person in the room.
I know. Party never started before I showed up. People would literally, even at the end, by the end of my time in New York, when I was already starting to explore consciousness and just researching things, and started doing the breath work and meditating, and people were devastated. My group were all saying, "How are we gonna? What if you don't show up? How are we going?" I had so much pressure to be there because they wanted me to show up and light up the whole group. And then when I started showing up and not drink, and I was just much more calm and not doing any crazy stuff, people were very unhappy with that because I was the source of this, the keeping the party
Fun.
going kind of thing for many.
It is,
Yeah.
isn't it so interesting? I mean, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but this idea of through self growth and through self evolution, obviously there's a shedding, and part of the shedding is a version of your old life that is not always as hard for you as much as sometimes it's hard for the people around you, that then makes it hard for you because they're the ones struggling.
You have to really put your foot down there. And I did. And I was always able to do that. And you know what? I did all kinds of drugs that people don't survive, but I knew for sure that I was going to survive them. I knew that I could quit them when I want. I knew I would never need a rehab or anything. I knew I could stop when I
You just
wanted.
had that
I just
gut
had
feeling. You're
that
like, I'm good.
willpower. I had the willpower. And that's the same willpower that takes me into getting up at 3 in the morning every morning for the last 9 years to do the spiritual practices. You have to have the discipline and the willpower. So even in the depth of like with the like going so far that I would have an overdose, I still knew I was going to make it. I was going to be fine. So
Which
uh,
is an amazing self knowing.
I was on my own, kind of, sort of. since I was about 6 months old. And my parents just gave me to my grandmother. Grandmother didn't really care much. And she would just like, as soon as I started walking, she'd open the door and just kick me out and go like, and it wasn't a private home or a yard. It was just an open
Out.
street. And she was just like out. And I remember going up and down the stairs. I could barely walk up the stairs. That's how little I was. And grandma was already, get out. So that trained me. And then I've been through a lot in my life. And I've also been through that whole coming over to the whole new world with $80
Big deal.
and
That's a
making
big
it,
deal.
and then I moved from Pennsylvania to New York with $100. So that was like
Ooh,
$20.
look, you're moving up in the world.
Right. So I'm a survivor in that sense, or I was, at least when I had to be. And I know that there's a part of me that has that inner strength that I will take care of things, make sure that I will not go down or under or whatever.
Did you ever have moments of, did you ever have like low moments of almost being frustrated that you were a survivor? Like
Goodness,
angry?
of course, like suicidal for years. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
You were.
Like in my mind, like I want this to end. I want this to stop. This is when I had the near death experience. I was begging that being that was talking to me in the form of Jesus Christ. I was begging him to keep me. I was like, can I please just stay here? I don't want to go back. No, you have to go back.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Being a
Yeah.
survivor is exhausting. I mean, it's so brilliant and so beautiful, as you said. Like, I knew I could do all this fucked up shit and I'd be fine because I know I'm a survivor. But then there's those times where you're like, why the fuck do I have to be a survivor?
There was a very strong aspect of me that kind of watched me, and was like, okay, you know what, right here, a little too much drama. Let's kind of tune that down a little bit. I literally watched myself as if from a different aspect, going through like pulling hair, oh, a breakup, oh my god, and there's a part of me going, yeah, whatever. So I've always had that in me. It's a part of, I guess it's a part of my composition, where I really did not um, dive into the depth of that devastation to the very bottom. There's always a part of me watching me going, yeah, so what? Like, whatever kind of attitude. So that helps a
Now,
lot.
do you think, and this can be like a good segue, so you had this kind of overdose and you projected, right? And so talk about that story you write about in the book, because I think it's a good foray for people who haven't read the book yet to understand kind of how this all started.
Well, yeah, that was my first. I think it started from exploration of the astral plane. So you can say 17 years and on. And then the overdose was somewhere in my 30s. So, partied hard, still had some stuff with me, barely came home, barely. And decided, hey, it's going to be a good idea to do a little bit more. And that's it. Just stuff started having all of the overdose symptom, foaming at the mouth and blood and convulsing, all that was happening. And I was by myself.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was going to interrupt for a second, because do you think, because you were talking about just before how many of these big moments of your life you kind of were watching yourself from over here, like you were astral projecting almost naturally.
Yeah.
Do you think in that moment you were aware within your body? Like when people go through overdoses, are they aware in that moment their mouth is foaming and there's blood?
Yeah.
Or were you aware because you astral projected and were seeing it happen?
I watched it because within the first few minutes, I was standing in my room in spirit, looking back at my body. That's it. And then the next thing I knew, I got pulled into that white tunnel of light, and then it spat me out into the white nowhere. And then the figure that looked just like Jesus came over and talked to me. And I felt very guilty because he told me you're wasting your life. And it was true. And you have to go back. I was begging him. I was, please, can I please stay here? I was like, no, you have to go back. And also that sense of love that everyone talks about. I felt that. I felt that floating through him. I felt that in that space. I felt that in his eyes. And I felt unworthy of that love. And that's what kind of made me agree for a moment. You agree internally. There is this hesitation, like, yeah, I really am not deserving to be here. And you're back in the body. That's it. Because this is what the handlers or the beings that greet you on the other side, that's what they utilize. And we're conditioned to feel this way 24/7 from all directions.
Yeah, let's get into it, because
Sure.
this is where it gets real interesting. So your book is all about kind of this trap of reincarnation and
Right.
kind of taking a different spin on, it's not, we don't have to keep playing out karma. This is actually a choice of ours.
Yeah.
So, and you're talking now about these are handlers that, when you kind of talk to other people, a lot of times they'll say you have angels that greet you and then help bring you to the other side. So talk already about that difference in kind of your experiences.
Yeah, as far as I have figured out, and anyone who believes differently, I please, they can believe whatever they like. I'm not here to pressure anyone to change their mind. But from what I've experienced, what I've seen through my sessions, the sessions that I do, that's in the book, when the soul comes out of the body, from a story or a few stories of other people sharing, including the story of one of my friends who went through a few rounds of negotiations with these beings. That's in my book too. And on my own, astral projecting, and that the near death, and then the near death that I asked for, that I had induced because I wanted to look at that whole dimension up close. And then I also had the quantum healing hypnosis session to ask about the afterlife. So I've collected a whole lot of data on this through my experiences. But from what I've observed, what I've figured out, as the afterlife dimension that is in charge of our reincarnation is run by shape-shifting beings that can present themselves in a way that you're going to believe the most. So if you believe in angels, you're going to see angels. If you believe in Jesus, I was once in a while in New York City when things hit the wall. I'd go to St. Patrick's Cathedral and talk to the picture of Jesus there. So Jesus showed up in my overdose in New York City. Then, so those who don't believe in any of these, they see their loved ones or the souls of someone they knew that they miss. The handlers literally will present to you what you believe in. If you believe in Krishna, you're going to see Krishna. If you believe in Jesus, you're going to see Jesus. If you believe in angels, you're going to see angels. And so it's not what is presented to us, because what's presented to us is what is going to open us up and follow what they're saying, make us want to do what they're saying. And you said it's a choice. They make it sound like it is a choice to return or to come back to the body or to reincarnate again, but they really don't give you any other choice. So they will run you in circles until they find that weak spot, so that you will agree to that one choice. And so, you made a choice. There you go. It's by choice, but no other choice is presented.
And talk about, like often said, is like you kind of go and you rest for a little bit first, and then you kind of decide what you're going to do next. In what you experience, it's opposite, right? You kind of decide and then rest.
No, you do rest. You are presented with the life review if you're dead. If you are in a near death experience, they're going to just tell you have to go
Convince
back
you.
because you didn't do so good, which in a way is a life review, or like, go back. But with the when a person passed away, they experience the life review first, and so at that moment they're shown, oh, you hurt all these people. We'll hurt people regardless of, even if we are a really good person, there's someone that felt that we did something that was painful for them.
Yep.
That's the human experience for us, or whatever. And so they give you the life review. At that moment you agree, yeah, I have to go back and do better, or I have to go back and suffer for pain of karma, let's say. They probably don't tell you that you have to go back and suffer, but they tell you, hey, you can do better than what you did the last time. And after that, you rest. You're right about that. After that you rest, because you are sent. The soul is sent, or the soul goes into the upper astral dimension that is experienced as heaven. And I've been there through astral projecting before, and I've been there through my induced near-death experience too, because I wanted to go check it out. And I promise you that even the people who are expecting to land in hell, which is the lower astral, and there is such a layer there, and it's very unpleasant, and you can hang out in there for a while if you are getting away from the handlers. There's this like time limit. After that, after the life review, everyone goes to heaven, so to speak. Everyone goes into this upper astral dimension. It's very pleasant. There's a feeling of love. There's the transparency. There's the colors, like the rainbow-like colors. There's the music of the spheres that you can feel in your soul there while you're hanging out in there. And most souls rest for about 3 years, and then they come back in. I know that from doing readings for people, the past life readings. Some prefer to hang there for longer, and so there might be 10 years. But there is no time in that dimension. So it's only 3 years for us in the human experience, but in the astral dimension of heaven, it's like a walk in the park.
And you're often, like, when you're coming back, you're often traveling within the same soul groups, right? Time and time and time again. And soul groups talk about this a little bit. They're a lot larger than I think people think. I think people think a soul group is like your immediate family and that's it.
Everyone
Talk a little bit about that.
Everyone everyone you interact with is a part of the soul group. There are the ones with whom you incarnate over and over and have really close relationships, and that's just an agreement, or that's just a different level of interaction of the souls together. But most souls interact in soul groups. So these are huge. Soul groups are huge. Imagine how many people you know in this lifetime. That's your soul group.
I mean, that's amazing. And also, I mean, I've heard before too, it's as large as like the person you might say hello to on the side of the road that maybe you don't even talk to again in your lifetime.
Probably. Yeah. That's a gray area from what I know. But probably if the cashier that you talk to every day or once a week at the store, that's a part of your soul group. The co-workers at work, that's a part of the soul group. But definitely closer, tighter relationships with the ones who are our immediate family. So I think that there are different layers to interactions within soul groups.
Now, what I found interesting in reading your book is this idea that once you incarnate into the earth plane or as a human, then that's where you refer to it as a trap. You're kind of stuck in this plane. That's the difference versus, as you know, most people who listen to this podcast hopefully are at least open to it, this idea that there's plenty of galaxies and other dimensions and, you know, other places to live. But for some reason, once you choose, that this is where your lifetime's going to be, then there's this weird trap where it's hard to get out, which is why you refer to these handlers of like convincing you to stay in, correct?
Yeah. That's what I've observed. And in one of my advanced meditations, I remembered coming into Earth. I remembered making a decision from a different place, from a different galaxy, from a different consciousness to come into Earth because there was this call for help. And my soul kind of barely even decided that I'm going to go. And next thing I knew, I felt my frequency drop, and then I went more and more into density, and then I was in the physical body. And it wasn't even physical human body; it was a different body that was available. So I've been on Earth before the human beings were even created as the species that we know now.
Right.
But then, so you can check in anytime you like. You can come in anytime you like.
But you can never leave.
That's it right there. Yeah. So once you got into the earth plane, into that dimension that holds souls around earth plane, that's it. Getting out takes an effort, and you can, but you have to know that you can, and you have to put work into it. And I'm pretty sure that the masters of Kriya Yoga, for example, were able to get out if they wanted to, because they knew how to go out of body at will and not astral project, but go past into higher realms of different dimensions. And there are other planes and other planets that are perhaps in a little, just a tiny bit higher frequency, that Earth plane. They also participate in our reincarnation cycle, and they have reincarnation cycles of their own. So there's this whole system that has reincarnation cycles, and it's interconnected, but it's all on a certain level of consciousness and certain level of frequency. But yeah, you're right. As soon as once you agreed and you're in for a while until you figure out how to get out.
Yeah, I have a few questions on that. So you're saying there's other, similar planets or areas that have that are on the same frequency, and you say they're interconnected. So are they their own, meaning once you agree to go into that place, you cycle through, or meaning you can go between those because they're the same frequency?
Yeah, I believe that you can go between those, but that's the last choice that they present to you. The first choice would be go back to Earth, and if you keep resisting, then there might be a moment when you're going to be presented with the choice to go to a different planet. That is what happened to one of my friends, and his story is in my book and also on my YouTube, where I actually interviewed him when he was telling that story. So he was resisting one set of beings and the next set of beings and the next set of beings, and then they said, okay, what if you go, would you like to go to a different planet? And he asked to see it, and when he saw it or felt it, it's really more like telepathic, so you feel it, and it was still within the limitations that he didn't want to be within. So he did not agree to that choice. And I've also seen different beings present at the moment when the soul comes out of the body, and that is that is through sessions that I facilitated for people. When there was at the beginning of my spiritual healing work, people were asking me to show up for the ones who were passing or were about to pass. And so I witnessed a couple of souls coming out of the body in that way, in a non-physical way, just observing what goes on there. And I saw that in one instance, or in more than one instance that's in my book, but there would be little beings around their sick bed that is not even of human origin at all, just waiting for that soul to come out, looking like our typical alien but blue color, and then typical gray. And then I saw one occurrence where there were two tunnels, and with one tunnel there were the beings that our commonly expected beings, the angelic looking, ascended master like looking beings, and the white light tunnel. And then there were beings that looked more like insectoids, although they had robes on and stuff. But they were they were very passive, both of them. They were just waiting for the soul to make their choice into which tunnel to go. And I don't really have a very good explanation as to why that was for this specific soul. Maybe she came from that reality into Earth, or maybe she had an agreement with these beings of some sort, but they were waiting for her, and the angelic looking ones were waiting for her too.
So tell me, to the best of your knowledge, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, I guess it's the why. I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, the why of the why. Like, because I feel like we all, and you say it, there's choice. You have a choice to do it, but you're not very aware how much choice. And so when you hear some of this, it feels a little constricting. It feels like there's a lot of control over you, which is the last thing I would always assume. When your soul leaves the body, you feel like you become the most magnanimous version of your highest self, and that you are, surrounded within that energy, but it feels like you're not quite there yet. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, why is there this other level? It feels like that still kind of has this control over you in some ways. And why is it so important when you choose this vibration to be in? Is there a reason? Is there something bigger? Is there like an idea of what the soul can learn and do? Or why is it like once you choose to kind of lower the frequency and enter these dimensions, whether it be Earth or these other planets, is it so difficult? Like, is it so important to stay?
Well, my theory is that it's an artificial installation that feeds the handlers with the energy that human beings produce through suffering. Also through love. As far as I'm being told now, I never read Robert Monroe's work, but he coined the term loosh. And so loosh, and in his,
that in your book.
As far as I know, through people telling me, that he says that human beings produce loosh also through love, but that I have doubts about. Not sure, but definitely through suffering. And definitely there is an interest in that energy, because we have spirits attaching to people in suffering, even in our everyday life, let alone in the whole system that was originally created to collect that energy. So we're kind of like a farm, unfortunately. The human beings are being farmed for that energy. Not a very happy feeling, not a very happy idea, but there is an empowerment. There's a part that empowers you once you realize that you don't have to be part of it, and then you can get out, and that's it. And so the beings that maintain and run the reincarnation cycle around Earth, they have an agenda. This is why we're kept here. And all of the beliefs on Earth, you have to pay off your karma, you are not good enough, you're lesser than, you are guilty just for existing, like all that stuff, that all feeds and works hand in hand with the tactics that these beings utilize when they are convincing the souls to continue staying here.
But when you can tap into your higher self, that is above and beyond, correct?
Yeah, and that also...
I know directional is weird, but...
Now that depends also on where the person is vibrating themselves, because there are different layers of higher selves, so to speak. But there is a possibility to tune into or to tap into what the um, teachings of the advanced yogis, they call it samadhi, the state of samadhi, which is the literally the energy that creates and sustains the world, the primordial field of everything. I call it the void. A lot of other people call it the void. Those who've been there in, it's not there, it's the state of being. And
Consciousness.
that just takes you out of all of the, because there's only tiny part of your overall soul that's having a human experience, tiny spirit, tiny part that is connected to that source consciousness. So pull that out and connect with source consciousness, and you're free.
Okay, let's get really weird for a second. So,
Sure.
under the idea that obviously, and those who are listening, if this is totally crazy, then just no worries. Just listen to it out, or believe or don't believe. It's okay. But knowing this idea that there's obviously, time, we said it up top, like time is its own illusion, and we live multiple timelines at the same time, but we just, in our human incarnation, can't comprehend that. So it's easier for us to just be on this linear time frame, and using this beautiful descriptor that I feel like you also said in your book, but you kind of alluded to here too, of your higher soul, your soul consciousness, and we're living just a little particle of it, your one little tentacle that's here. Could other parts of your soul be living in these other dimensions already? Like back to that red planet that you came from, could part of you still be living there simultaneously, and the other parts of your soul be living in other dimensions? Or no, it all constricts to one?
No. I definitely, we're multidimensional beings. So we're having experiences in other realities and other worlds simultaneously, for sure. Earth plane is just one of these experiences, but we're so isolated here and wiped, and we just don't remember. Some people do. I now am remembering through clearing all the filters. I'm remembering or being able to see myself living in other realities too, and also sometimes parallel timelines in here while in physical experience. That's pretty wild. But in a
That's
way,
crazy.
that is, in a way, you have to be of sound mind to be able to handle this kind of information. Otherwise, people
Though
can,
people would say you're crazy.
no, people just go off the rails because it's too much for them to deal with all of the input from all other realities. You could tune into that, but then it makes it very challenging to actually operate within the physical reality. So yeah, we're multidimensional souls. Thank you for that reference. I like from my book about the tentacle of the soul. I like that because I think it makes it comical to just visualize an octopus and as the over soul. And
It's helpful, yeah.
yeah,
So another thing you talk about in your book that were kind of, you even said it when you had your first experience, and they, Jesus said to you, like, you're kind of failing, like, go back.
yeah,
There's more you can do. And you say they kind of always allude to this bigger purpose,
yeah,
but they don't always tell you what it
right.
is. So at your core, do you feel like that itself is an illusion to keep us in this unworthiness pattern? Or do you feel like there are purposes that if we kind of can hit it, it could help us raise our vibration, which could help? Like, is it like, could it be like the key to how to get out?
Well, you know what? I am kind of chewing on that question myself, because we're all born with a set of skills that are innate to us. And when we tap into that innate set of skills, what it is that we do for people naturally, then the life becomes lighter and easier, and your work is no longer work because you enjoy it, and it's a natural extension of yourself. I was saying always, hey, I want to be paid for just being me. and it's happening now.
That's
Because
amazing.
the work that I do is very much an extension of my state of being, and the more I evolve, the more my work evolves with me. So um, we come with a set of abilities. Everyone has abilities, and everyone has the set of skills that are natural for us. And so when we tap into that, we become happier. Our vibration is higher, or our frequency is higher, because we are in a whole different experience of life. We're not hating our 9 to 5 job any
Right.
longer, all that. And in a way, we kind of pull out of the whole providing loosh for the handlers kind of situation, right? So there is that. But on the other hand, yeah, a lot of people are told, hey, when they're having near death experiences, hey, you know what? You have a purpose here on earth. Go ahead. You haven't even started. They come to earth and then they figure it out on their own. So, is this an illusion, or is this a return to the natural set of skills? Did you come with that natural set of skills from the story of the soul, from your previous karmic experiences? There is a whole, like, many, many layers to that. So, I think that, but here's the point: a lot of New Age teachings say that we are on earth because we want to learn something, collect information, and take it back to source. That does not, suffer through all this and take it back to source, because source is what? Learning, experience in itself, because source is learning through our experience. Couple points here. First of all, sometimes, how many variations of the human experience are there really? If you think about
Right.
that. Sometimes I
Right.
sit with my clients and I listen to the same story over and
Right.
over, coming from different people for the entire week. And I would be like,
Right.
well, I wonder if the next one is going to tell me that same story again, because they're vibrationally matched all to be in the same week. So it's redundant. It doesn't take thousands of years to run every human experience, or whatever, hundreds of thousands that we've been here. And then source consciousness that embodies everything, all knowledge, all existence, everything that is within existence is the fabric of source. What is source learning through us having a human experience?
Right.
If it's already all there,
Wouldn't source already know? That's what I was going to say. Doesn't
right?
source technically already know it all?
It's already all there. We are a part of that source. Our souls technically are made of the same fabric. All the knowledge is written within our soul as a fabric of source. What can source be possibly learning through our suffering on earth? So I do not agree with that idea. I think that's an idea to make us feel better, because when you think that you are suffering for a bigger cause, oh, I'm suffering for source, so that source learns through my suffering. Well, it makes it easier to suffer or to go through whatever we're going through, right?
Right. What about the idea if you not necessarily suffer, but you suffer to evolve for the human experience to get you back to source, which is what you are and already knows. So it's like you evolve, like some of the things you talk about, like how to process kind of pain and sadness so that you can go beyond it, really. Is there that idea that maybe some of the experiences are there for the human to reconnect to source, which already knows, like you said, the expansion of all?
I don't know. That seems to be the part of the same concept to me. It seems to be the part of the same concept that we are doing something to serve source. But source is omnipresent quantum field of information that already has all the information, including all the information about all the pain, if you if you're talking about that. Is there a part of the human experience where after thousands of years of being recycled, you hit the point and say, you know what, I had enough? And then you get out, or you start looking for the ways to get out, and you do get out. There's definitely that. Whether that
Yeah.
serves source or not, I don't know, but I know that it is a process or a part of the human experience, so it could be. And when I gave my first workshop on this subject, I had very interesting combination of people have the yoga festival. So there were teachers who teach advanced yogic practices, and they're students of these teachers. They were all in my class, and they were half and half. Half was saying, wow, yeah, we've experienced the void, we want to go, we want to get out, we don't want to be here. And the other half was saying, why would we even want to get out of Earth experience?
Well, I was going to actually say that to people listening is some of you may really enjoy coming back and love your soul group and want to keep doing different versions of it. It's not probably for everyone to be ready to transcend it.
I think this has to do with how much time, how many experiences you already had here. Because the souls that have been here for thousands of incarnations, let's just say, they've already seen it, done it all, and oh my God, what else am I going to do? And then you start asking bigger questions. But those who are kind of recently recruited, recently trapped, recently recruited, it's still a playground. And so that just demonstrates the different level of where people are, and where their consciousness is too. A lot of ego is in the question, like, wow, why would I be just omnipresent source and not do anything? How am I not gonna be like, how am I gonna live if I am not doing anything? So that's the question from the ego point. That's a very human question kind of thing.
Very. Well, very. It's interesting because also talk about this idea that, a lot of people are saying is like the Earth's vibration is raising. We're moving to a 5D, a fifth dimensional plane. So how does this play into this idea of kind of the vibration that keeps us in this entrapment is under the fifth dimension? So how does that shift things or change things?
I don't really know that we are moving into 5D. This could be kind of like a big carrot in the sky, or something that we aspire to get to, or something that the soul is remembering. The soul is remembering that life needs that was different before. Life was different before, and why is it now? And in 5D, life is different, and we're moving towards that. Can we reach it as a collective, trapped within a dimension that ends the astral plane, that kind of hits the ceiling at 4.9D, 4.99D? I don't know.
Right.
But I think that if we are really getting into the fifth dimension, then that's going to be a big transition, big transformation. I know that non-terrestrial beings, let's say in the Pleiades, there are beings who are of fifth density, and they're the lowest in there. Fifth density meaning fifth dimension. They are the lowest in their evolutionary chain, for example, right? So they're at the bottom, and then it just builds into higher levels of consciousness. So maybe we will shift. And these beings are capable of things that human beings are not capable of yet. And I don't know if while we're in this solid physicality and separation, if we're going to be able to do that, meaning truly reach the fifth dimension. But the story of the fifth dimension is a beautiful, inspirational story for people to keep digging themselves out of the lower dimensional states.
So speaking of that, talk about some of the fun places, or not fun, whatever places you've enjoyed doing your quantum traveling, because through your quantum traveling, you've been able to experience some other dimensions, other planets, other places. Have you gone back to the red planet where you originally came from?
That was a while back, and I remember that I tuned into that. And recently, someone actually created artwork and put it on YouTube that was inspired by my book. And I have a friend who also remembered the red planet, and I remember in the red planet, even when I was back in New York, or at the very beginning of my journey, like, or the end of my New York chapter, and beginning of my journey towards Sedona. But I really did not, I wasn't drawn to like just go scope that. I remember it really well to begin with, and I remembered that in meditation. But I have quantum traveled because I'm very curious. And so every reality that I would hear about, let's say on Gaia TV, right? They talk about the Pleiadian constellation. So I'll be like, oh, let's go explore Pleiadian constellation. Or they would say, there are dog people, right? The beings that we see depicted in ancient, on the walls of ancient Egypt, like Anubis, and they live somewhere in the cosmos. Oh, let's go find those beings and explore. And so that was a lot of fun. That was in the constellation of Sirius, where I found these beings. There is a spot where they live and their environment. And I also made a friend. I made a connection with the being that I've been interacting with since, and that looks very well, not a lot, but that kind of sort of presents itself in the non-physical form. Similarly, with the canine head and humanoid body, and his helped me quite a bit, and he's been given like tips and um, suggestions, let's just say, or information about my own path as well. So he's been very good friend. I really appreciate that connection. But I know their reality, and I know what it feels like to be in their reality. But these are still the lower layers of reality above 5D. But I know that my favorite place to go is into the Andromeda galaxy, and there is a tiny, not tiny, well, smaller planet there that feels like just being, just entering into I don't know, like a bowl of selenite, let's just say, but it's not solid.
Ooh.
The selenite, that it has
Yeah.
all of these um, facets to itself, right? And but when you go in, it feels very soft, and you just get absorbed into that consciousness. And that consciousness can speak to you through, because they are all in shared consciousness, through like a shared mind, and through the beings that live within that state of being. But I just love to go in there and dissolve kind of into that energetic state of being that is really high frequency. That's one of my favorite dimensions. I also really like I call it the rainbow dimension, although it's not really human like what we know here, 7 colors, right? But there are cosmic variations of the spectrum of these colors, and that is the creator dimension, kind of the space where if we want to layer it like a cake, there is the source, that dark space, samadhi, or the void. So being in the void is called a state of samadhi. And then right below that, or right where the light enters, there is that incredible spectrum of color, and it creates its natural creation of things, literally through consciousness. There are no beings there. All it is as consciousness of color, if you wish, so that
That's amazing.
generates different formations, and then it just goes back into that fabric of the light and then generates. And there's another there's another place that I like to visit, and I see that a lot through my clients, because there are quite a few. There used to be very few that I encountered, and now I'm encountering more and more of the beings that are connected to the Cassiopeian constellation. And there are beings who are able, some of them are the beings who are able to play with that color, color fabric of energy, of color fabric of consciousness, if you wish, to generate things and then dissolve them and generate them just for fun, just to play. They can literally create anything out of that. Just so it's more personified, right? So there are beings who actually are able to play with that the fabric of energy. So it's hard to explain that in words,
Yeah,
especially
that's
now. This
cool.
is the first time I'm explaining this in words like that, but it's so exciting just because you get into that state of being of these things
Yeah.
happening, and all of that is completely sober. By the way, none
Right, right.
none of none of that is
No substance.
none of that is induced. Yes, all of that is through what I call quantum travel, where you project out of body, or you direct your spirit form into a different reality. So you're having an out of body experience that is not astral projecting.
So, two questions on that. If someone wants to learn how to astral project and quantum travel, what's a good way for them to do that? And then on the second half, which we can get into, is talk about if also people are into like, yeah, you know what, I feel like I have incarnated a bunch and I might want to, the next life, not be stuck in the human experience, maybe go to a different dimension. What are things they can be working on here during this lifetime to help give them that
All right,
choice?
so two big questions. The first one, I would not be recommended to learn how to astral project anymore, because it is just it's just gonna take you into the astral plane, where we have plant and animal spirits, where we have disincarnate souls, where we have the lower astral with the beings that we know as demonic beings or unpleasant beings. We have upper astral, where we have more pleasant spirits, but it's everything that has to do with earth plane. And if you taught yourself how to astral project first, then getting an out of body in a different way might be a little bit challenging, I think, because you will by default go into the astral plane. I would say if a person wants to learn how to go out of body, then start right away from quantum travel, and that requires breath work that would wake up your Kundalini energy. And the type of breath work that I do is called cosmic cobra breath. And that is, in yogic terms, that is Tantric Kriya Kundalini Pranayam, that takes the energy from the root center, lights it up and sends it up out of the top of your head. That wakes you up, your Kundalini energy. You can utilize your Kundalini energy to shoot that little part of your soul that's having the human experience straight out
Oh,
and send it to a different reality. Remember where you want to go before you do that, before you start your practice, and then remember where your body is so you can return to it. That remembering where your body is, so you can return to it, that's a good practice, good thing for astral projection as well. So that,
yes.
and these things could be just researched, and again, breath work and meditative work, so that you can learn how to handle your spirit form. That's it. That's the idea. what they can learn into, or if they want to get out of here, the path is the same. First of all, know that you can. That's the number one thought.
You have a
Secondary,
choice.
learn how to operate your spirit form while still alive. That will give you choices, and that will also remove the fear of death. Because you just come in and out of your body, and when you die, it's the same thing, except that you don't come back. Learn how to go out of body, past the astral plane through advanced yogic practices. So that would be a short answer to your questions.
And that's interesting because I feel like a lot of different modalities that you study, they will talk about different ways in death to bring your body out. So it's almost like you said, these higher practices are very aware actually of maybe how to.
Yeah. I started on one of the podcasts I recently talked to the host, and he asked me if what I'm doing is Kriya Yoga, and I had no idea. So I started looking into that since he asked me that, and I'm reading the autobiography of the Yogi by Yogananda, and I'm blown away how much attention is on getting out of Earth plane. It's all about reconnecting with source and getting out and leaving the body and shutting down the body and gaining control over your prana so you can get out. And literally yesterday, I was watching something on YouTube. Shri M. He teaches some Kriya yoga on YouTube, and he is one of the disciples of the yogic teachers. He said, if you are able to get out of your body and go into source consciousness, state of samadhi, travel out of body entirely and stay there for 3 days, then that's it. The body will just die and you're gone and you're free. So I was like, whoa, he's talking about that right there on YouTube. And then Shri Yaktaswar, I have a problem pronouncing his name, but Yogananda's teacher. He also has a short book that's called The Holy Science, and there is so much there also about reincarnation cycle and gaining control over your energetic form and your consciousness so you can move out. So it seems like all of these teachings,
and they're old.
A lot of them, at least, are about learning how to control your spirit form. You're a spirit, you have a body, and you can make that spirit do whatever it wants if you really pay or put effort into that. So is it going to just happen? No, you have to put an effort into it. But I believe it's worth it for the freedom of the soul, for the freedom of choice.
Well, this is so much to ponder and think about, and I love
Thank
it.
you.
And I mean, I've actually kept you for quite a while. So.
Thank you. I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate that you read my book, and I appreciate that you remember it so well and that you are referring to it. It is really refreshing to have the conversation based on what I actually said in the book rather than just questions, out of thin air.
The amorphous questions. Yeah. No, I thought the book was great. First of all, it's very digestible, which is helpful when you're talking about big concepts, I find. And it's fascinating, and you're fascinating.
Thank you.
And you're, I'm glad you came back because you have done a lot with this lifetime and you're helping a lot of people. So for that, I'm grateful. And I'm grateful for this conversation. And thank you for bringing it to our community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on the show.